the bottom line. Housing people is more humane and less expensive than throwing people into cages. What are your thoughts, Mr. King of Kensington?
I think we should leave encampments alone.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Stripper news.
Stripper news!
Stripper news. Hi, I'm Andrea with Stripper News. Ooh, this just in. Former hash dealer and current Premier Doug Ford is solving the housing crisis by throwing unhoused people and drug users in jail.
These encampments are taking over public spaces, with illegal drug use happening out in the open. Enough is enough.
The PC's just passed Bill 6, or the Safer Municipalities Act, which increases police power to evict unhoused people from encampments, arrest anyone suspected of doing drugs, and subjects people to fines of $10,000 or 6 months in jail. Evicting unhoused people from encampments when there are no shelter spaces available is a violation of their human rights. The purported intention behind Bill 6 is cleaning up the parks and protecting private spaces. But the problem is, Toronto shelters are totally full. They're at capacity, and there is nowhere for unhoused people to go. Like most of Doug Ford's shameless power grabs, Bill 6 is vulnerable to a charter challenge because it tramples on the fundamental rights and freedoms of the most vulnerable people in the province. But wait, if Dougie doesn't want people doing drugs in public spaces, why'd he shut down all the supervised consumption sites? There's at least 80,000 homeless people in Ontario and more than 700 encampments. Is the solution to homelessness really mass incarceration?
Hello.
Hello, Andrea.
Diana, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Stripper news!
Diana Chan-McNally. Tell us a little bit about you.
I am a longtime frontline worker with homeless people, a homelessness advocate, and somebody who's been organizing a lot around human rights for encampment residents.
Wow. Icon.
We are catering to a handful of people to essentially criminalize and take away some of the charter rights of people who are marginalized and unhoused.
Can you tell us a little bit about Bill 6 and whether it will actually make municipalities safer?
I can firmly say that it will not make municipalities safer, but what it will do is make safety for people who are unhoused even worse. So what it essentially does is that it gives powers to police and the courts to immediately evict encampments. And for people who do not comply, they can be arrested and put into jail for up to 6 months or fined up to $10,000. And this is all on the basis of suspecting that somebody who's homeless and living in an encampment is using drugs or has possession of drugs. So we're conflating homelessness, we're conflating drug use as being the same issue and saying that both of these things shouldn't exist in public spaces.
If I do recall, Doug Ford recently shut down 9 out of 10 supervised consumption sites in Toronto. That seems to be in conflict with his desire to not see any public drug use. What do you think about that choice and how it compounds with Bill 6?
I mean, I think it's part of the same issue. We are actively targeting people who use drugs and actually launching a drug war against people. So with the shutdown of supervised consumption sites, we're saying you can't have dedicated space to use drugs. We don't care about your safety and your health and your welfare, but you also can't use in public spaces, which is to say for people who are homeless, living in encampment, they have nowhere to go to actually use drugs. And we know for a lot of people who are using drugs, this is about mitigating pain, it's about mitigating trauma, it's also just about having a reprieve for a moment from a really kind of awful circumstance that you're in. So we're making it impossible for homeless people to even exist who use drugs in any kind of space.
What do you say to those people that feel like encampments and drug use infringe on their rights to use public parks?
You don't have a human right to use a park. Sorry, but it's true. You also don't have a human right to not see things you don't want to see or not feel uncomfortable. But the reality is that we are violating people's rights who are living outdoors in encampments. We're violating their right to life, liberty, and safety, as well as to housing. So this combined, if we actually look at the charter, we look at legal frameworks, we're talking about human rights here, it's clear that there is one group who we're infringing upon, and that is specifically homeless people. So for all those folks out there who are just like, I don't want to see people in parks anymore, I'm tired of it, honestly, the only solution to that is to give people housing.
Do you think that maybe cops are the solution to housing?
No. don't think cops are cops are not the solution to housing. Bill 6 is not the solution here either. Cops, Bill 6, these things are not going to build what people actually need, which is, as you said, housing. What it will do is punish people, profile people, treat them like they're criminals when, again, it is their human rights that are being violated. It's not that they're criminals. We are violating their basic rights. I think with sending out police to actually deal with encampments, this is not their work. This has never been the work of police, whether you agree with police existing or not. Their job is not to be social workers. That's my job. That's a lot of people's jobs. And so we should be sending out the right kinds of people to be providing support to people and ensure, again, that we have actual places for people to go. You know, folks are living outside, it's because they don't have any other decent choices. So why don't we start acting and providing those choices instead of just leaving people to live in a park and then criminalize them?
I'm going to ask you a very serious question now.
Sure.
Marry, kill. Abstinence, harm reduction, or forced involuntary treatment?
Marry, harm reduction. Maybe involuntary treatment, because you never know what's going to happen. It might just get a little crazy. And then, no, I'm kidding. Abstinence and then kill involuntary treatment.
Yeah! That's the correct answer.
That's the correct answer. It's the only answer.
What do you know about the heart hubs? All of these supervised consumption sites being converted to heart hubs. What are heart hubs?
What are heart hubs? I don't think actually anyone knows.
The heart hubs are designed to help people stabilize their lives and get rehabilitated from addiction.
The Heart Hub model is a new approach to help the most vulnerable.
I think even people working in supervised consumption sites, working in harm reduction, are just like, I don't know what this thing is. There is no model for a heart hub. I know what they're not, and what they aren't are places for people to use drugs safely so that we don't have folks overdosing because of toxic drugs. So it's not that, it doesn't duplicate that service, but what it seems to do instead is absolutely nothing. So we know that there are no drug treatment beds, voluntary or otherwise, and we should only have voluntary beds if we have them at all. We also know that there's no housing attached to this right now, so this doesn't exist yet. As far as I know, some places offer things like case management, other places offer laundry, but none of these things are actually addressing the real issue, which is toxic drugs out on the street and people dying as a result.
I think testing drugs is really important, and that's one of the many things that people were able to do at supervised consumption sites that they're not able to do at heart hubs.
Yes.
What are some of the other things that supervised consumption sites were providing for members of the community who use drugs?
I think people don't really understand what supervised consumption sites did, and yeah, part of it was making sure that people who use drugs, their own drugs, can do that safely. If there's a risk of overdose, we can help reverse that and make sure that people are safe and healthy. But we also connected people to other kinds of healthcare services, to housing workers, folks who could help with ID, but most importantly, just a community of people who were decent and kind and supportive and non-judgmental. And for most folks, that's actually the difference that they need in their life, is somebody who actually has their back. So that, I think, was the most important part, ultimately, besides obviously toxic drugs and reversing this and just dealing with this, but I think it was the most important part, was giving people a place to be where they knew that someone had their back. We don't really have that anymore, unfortunately.
And not a single death.
Not a single one. Nobody has died in a supervised consumption site. So they are actively saving lives. We know this. There is no reason to actually shut these spaces down. It goes against evidence, it goes against public health, and we know that it is sadly killing people to not have these sites open. And not just in terms of people overdosing, but folks who are getting connected, who are finding housing, for example, through supervised consumption sites, they're not able to do that anymore. So it's just an absolute devastating situation, I think, that we're in right now.
I think people underestimate how much we need a sense of belonging in community and how isolating it can be to feel stigmatized on all sides when you're already homeless and a drug user, and all the various ways that people are marginalized in this society. I think those supervised consumption sites gave people a sense that they were still human beings who deserved to be treated with respect and dignity.
Absolutely, and without judging their choices, without judging their situation. Everybody, no matter who you are, deserves that. And for folks who are on the street and using drugs, there are very, very few places where they're going to find that kind of community and care, especially with the kind of supports that they need. So to take that away from people, you're taking away their lifeline on many different levels. So I agree with you. I think that sense of belonging actually is the most important thing.
What's happening with Bill 6? We know it's passed. Are there any challenges to it? And do you know, how can people help? How can people challenge Bill 6?
We are working on some litigation right now. So we are going to sue the government. We are going to take them to court. We are going to challenge them in court because this is a gross violation of people's human rights, as I've already said. So that is definitely going to be part of it. But if everyday people are wondering how can we challenge this, it's really just ensuring, again, that we continue this public narrative that people who are homeless are, in fact, people. Sadly, there's a growing kind of public discourse that if you're homeless, it's because you did something wrong in your life. You're not really a person anymore. And so when you dehumanize people like that, that's when we allow things like Bill 6 to come into being. And we'll see enforcement as a result of that. So I just say to everyday people, just continue to show compassion, include people who are homeless in the dialogue, and ensure that we are putting their perspectives to the forefront.
Yeah. Let's quickly talk about Bill 10.
Yes.
So have you heard about Bill 10?
I have heard about Bill 10, and it is a show. It's really a companion piece of legislation to Bill 6. So Bill 6 makes it very legal for you to possess or use drugs in a public space. Bill 10 makes it pretty much impossible for folks to be a drug user in a private space. So no matter where you are, unless you own your own mansion and have $1 billion, only then can you do whatever you want. So what we're going to see is that landlords, interestingly, commercial and residential landlords, are now going to be criminally responsible for drug trafficking on their premises. And it can include fines of up to $1 million and a year in jail. So even though this doesn't impact tenants or patrons necessarily, you're going to see profiling, you're going to see surveillance, you're going to see supportive housing, which has a mandate to support people who use drugs, start to shut down, most likely. We're going to see an exodus of people from that field because they could be criminally responsible under this new law, even though their job is to support people who use drugs. So Bill 10, I think, is really scary. And as I said, it makes sure that no matter who you are, what space you're in, you can't be somebody who uses drugs. And in my opinion, this is all to start forcing people into drug treatment because we can monetize that. It's very profitable.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. Just saying. Big bucks.
Bill 10, are there any court challenges happening with that?
Not yet. I think we need to learn a little bit more about Bill 10 because the application is so broad. We're talking about not just anyone who lives in rental housing, but as I mentioned, supportive housing. We're also talking about bars, clubs, coffee shops, quick serve restaurants. Any space that is rented could be subject to this bill, but we don't know who the bill is really targeting. I assume that the government had a target, but I don't know who that is. I can't figure out who the lobbyist is who wanted this kind of legislation in place because it seems like you're going to piss off some landlords. Usually those folks, you would think, would be on side with a lot of the laws that are being put in place by this government, but this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I'm still trying to figure it out. And until we understand it better and until we start to see it applied, I think we're going to hold back on a lawsuit. But I'm hoping, and I think we will challenge this in the future depending on how it goes.
That's so exciting to think about a prospective challenge to it. And it's interesting to think who is the force behind pushing a law that holds landlords criminally liable for drug use on their premises.
Yeah, but it doesn't give them tools to evict them. So it really is the landlords who will be culpable here, which I'm not exactly always on the side of landlords for obvious reasons, but I think at this point it's just too mysterious.
We're on it. Stripper news.
Stripper news.
We are on the case. We're going to find out who's behind this. Not only drug treatment, but presumably jail.
Yes, exactly. And so with both Bill 6 and Bill 10, you will see people end up in jail. And it's interesting because we know that jails are full. They're way over capacity. I've got people I know who are staying in cells with 3 other people. Not okay, not healthy, but we don't tend to look at these things critically because we don't think about, again, people who are criminals as being human beings either. But all this said, if you don't have enough jail capacity, then what are you going to do? Maybe build jails? Maybe this is what Doug Ford is planning? And actually, as a point of fact, in this year's budget, he's put in 952 new prison beds as part of the budget. No new housing, no new supportive housing, but prison beds. So at this point, we know that he's already giving out private contracts to build prisons, to renovate them, and most likely we're going to see more prison beds, absolutely, but also potentially we may start to see the privatization of prison services in the future. That's me conjecturing, but I think we should be monitoring this. Dark shit.
That is so f***ed up.
Yeah, it's f***ed up. Very f***ed up.
And it is important to remind our viewers that every prisoner in an Ontario jail is not only forced to work, but forced to work for no pay.
Yeah. Absolutely. License plates, for example, made by prisoners. And the wild thing is, yes, they're being forced into labor, but we pay for people to be put in this situation. It's not just gross and dehumanizing and a violation of people's rights. We are paying for each person who's in jail $133,000 a year for them to be in that position. That is way more than my rent, anybody's rent. And frankly, it doesn't actually solve issues like homelessness, but to your point, it is a good way to get free labor and to monetize people's very existence. So it's what it's all about, it's money.
So what you're saying is mass incarceration is not the solution to homelessness.
Incredibly, that is exactly what I am saying. We should not posit that as a solution. It's really interesting because this very idea actually comes from the United States. It is Donald Trump approved policy that he has used to evict hundreds of people from the Deschutes Forest in Oregon, for example.
Oregon Forest Service officials have started sweeping homeless campers, some who've spent years living in the Deschutes National Forest near Bend.
Bill 6 and the laws that Trump are using look almost exactly the same. So you have nowhere to go. There's not enough shelter. Doesn't matter. We're going to evict you. And if you don't comply, you're going to go to jail for 6 months. Or in the U.S., you're going to be fined $5,000 USD. Our fines are actually higher. We're doing worse than Donald Trump, but we're using the same playbook against homeless people. So it doesn't work. It has not housed a single American and certainly is not going to house anyone here. But to your point, it will start to put people in prisons and saddle them with unpayable fines.
So much for elbows up and Canada's not for sale, huh?
Well, if you are a drug user or you are a person who is homeless, you are up for sale. You will be used to make money. That's what this is all about. I hate it.
Stripper news!
Stripper news!
Some drug users are our friends, our family, our cherished loved ones, and meaningful members of our community. Some drug users even get stadiums named after them. Remember, he ain't heavy, Doug. He's your brother. Stripper news.